So today we are going to start with the fault identification, and we will mark the dents and other cracks. We have cracks, we have rust, and we are going to rectify those mistakes or those faults. So you know the tools that you need. You need hammers, assortment of hammers for boardwork. You need body file, sandpapers, hardener, body filler. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, viewers. Welcome to another episode of Repairing a Dent. We'll take you through the processes that are involved when you are repairing a dent on a vehicle panel. There are about four processes that are involved in repairing a dent. The first step or the first process is panel beating. The panel beating involves metalworking techniques that are done to restore a dented area to its original contour or profile. And basically, a contour or a profile just stands for shape and size, right? Shape and size. That's what a profile stands for. So that should be taken into consideration, that you need the original shape and also the size of the panel to be of the surface. There are several processes that are involved in panel beating. And normally we start with the rough work, and the rough work depends on the extent of the dent. For example, you can do bumping with a bumping hammer if the dent is to a large extent, is a big dent, and you want to bring the body into shape using large forces. So we use a bumping hammer. If it's not that extent, then you can do shrinking. And shrinking, use a shrinking hammer. And shrinking, well, you are doing it with a shrinking hammer. You can also refer to that as code shrinking, since we also have heat shrinking. And heat shrinking is a process which is done where if the metal or the sheet metal or the body panel is too stretched, that normal shrinking does not return the bulging to its original contour, we use heat and the quenching, and that is a process we will talk about, or we will show in another episode. Sometimes the dents may be small, so we use a picking hammer to do what you call picking. You pick the dents, the small dents, using a picking hammer. Remember, when you are doing the shrinking, you are doing that using a dolly or a spoon, depending on the location of the dent. Sometimes the dent might be in a place where we can't really access with a dolly. The normal shrinking will not work. That's when we use pulling. We do pulling, and we use a pulling hammer. And a pulling hammer has a weight that slides, and it has either a clamp or a hook. which we use to pull studs that are welded on the dent. And sometimes pulling can be done using electric pulling hammer, whereby the action of attaching the pulling hammer to the body requires an electric volt or a current to be attached. All right. Sometimes the dent might be just a small bulge which does not require any kind of shrinking. So we do what we call bumping. You do what we call slapping, sorry. You slap the dent with a spoon so that the body just returns into shape, depending on the kind of metal that is used on the body and also the extent of the dent. And if you have done some pulling, of course, you'll need to cut the studs off. And when you have cut the studs, then you do some welding. You grind the studs so that the area is the surface is flat. Sometimes the dent can be hard, like large, like when a vehicle hits a post or a head-on collision. You don't use the now hammers. The vehicle is taken onto a machine with hydraulic pullers, and it is stretched back into shape, depending on where the dent is. Especially if the dent is in the case of a head collision, is in the engine compartment or the boot, whereby the cramp zone which helped protect the passengers just shrunk completely out of shape. So that is when we use hydraulic pullers. And some of them are even computerized, so as to accurately return the body to its original profile accurately. Now, when you have, in our case, we have a small dent, we should just use the normal shrinking using a dolly and a hammer, and in some cases, we'll use some spoons. We will also do what we call planishing. The planishing now is the smoothing out of the dented area after shrinking, because the shrinking hammer is quite rough. You rough out the dent, the large dent, and when it is almost flat or into profile, now you smoothen out the dent using a planishing hammer and a dolly, which is depending, and the dolly, you should have assortment of dollies. So sometimes the shape of the panel will require a certain different shaped dolly. All right, so that's what we will be doing today on this set and in this episode, the repairing a dent and hammering. After having completed after having completed the panel beating, after having completed the panel beating, it is time now for us to fill the dent. It's time to fill the dent, and how we'll start with scoring the area so that it's rough to enhance adhesion, and then we also clean the area with the soap and water to remove dirt and grease, and that's why we're using the soap to remove the grease. And then after scoring and cleaning, then we will open the container, and the container, making sure that the container, when you're opening it, you are careful. You have to use an object, and then you have to go around the reed so that you don't destroy the reed, because if you destroy the reed by pulling on one side too much, then it will not cover. When you close it, it will not cover completely, and air will enter, and the feeder will deteriorate, And of course, when filler deteriorates, those are what we call losses. Those are what we call losses. So opening of the container is very important to take care of the container. The safety of the container is important so that we can continue to do business. We are in a business. This is a business and industry. And if we are not careful, we don't want to lose materials without, in fact, you don't have to like lose a whole container every time you repair like a single dent. That's kind of wrong. So it is important to open the container carefully. Then you have to also to wear rubber gloves for safety, for your personal safety, because we don't want the chemicals in the filler and the hardener to come into contact with your body. Because we don't really know what happens in the companies where the industry and manufacturer, you are not there. If we do sometimes, but some of these chemicals are not that good. When you are scooping the filler, use a different knife, not the one that you're going to mix with. So you should have a scooping knife for scooping filler, and that one should only be for scooping. So that when you mix the filler and the hardener, you don't allow the chemical to go back into the container, whereby now the hardener which goes back into the container will now go and cure our materials, our body filler, which is not required for use. So in that case, you don't want to create losses again. So also we use a different scooper, right? So you scoop the filler and put it on a mixing plate, and then the way you place it on the mixing plate should be like, assume that your paddle is like a circle, and we want to mix a hardener in the ratio of 2 is to 100. That is 2 parts hardener, 100 parts filler. So we don't have to do that. We can't measure that accurately, completely 100%, but there's a way which you can get a very nice approximation. Make sure that your filler is kind of in a pool which creates like a circle, and then you add hardener by making because the colored hardener it's different, can be blue, can be red, and the filler is white or creamish. So you cross a line with the hardener over the paddle or the filler paddle. And when you cross like a diameter, then you are creating approximating that the whole paddle will be about 2 to 100. But then again, after practicing a lot, you will get used to how to get accurately, because now you will be experienced. And now after mixing several times, you get the idea, you get to know, you get to fine tune yourself. So just know that the idea is to 100. Even when you read the instruction on the container, it's usually 1 to 2% hardener to 2 to 100 parts of filler. Now, when you do that, now you have to mix the hardener with a knife, and you mix the hardener and the filler thoroughly. And how do you ensure that you have mixed thoroughly? Because both of them are 2 different colors, you mix them such that it becomes a uniform color. That is an indicator that it is thoroughly mixed. And how do you do that? You swirl or swirling. And swirling just swirling, what I mean is circular motion. You move the filler in circular motion, and then toward the floor across the whole paddle. And that way you repeat the circular motion toward the floor, circular motion toward the floor, circular motion toward the floor, crisscross toward the floor, across toward the floor, upward and down, longitudinally, depending on where you are standing. And then somehow the filler and hardener will mix uniformly. Make sure that you don't have areas where you have colors that are more than another areas. That means the filler is not mixed thoroughly, and now you form a chemical whereby some parts are curing faster than the others, and that one will cause cracks and so forth. Um, when you are applying, you use it is good to use plastic knives for application, or plastic scoop spatulas. You can also call them spatula. It's a flat thing, flat thing, and it's like a rectangular thing, right? And the one thing should be straight. When it's straight, the line that will be touching the body, the vehicle panel, so that as you apply, you have like a smooth application. So you should apply thin layers of filler, and you should apply some pressure when you are applying that knifing motion. Apply some pressure so that you remove trapped paddles, because these paddles will come to create problems later. So they will come to create problems where you have pinholes and stuff like that. Then, of course, after applying, you should wait for it to cure before applying. And now remember, you should use an amount when you are scooping the amount. Don't just use a lot of amount. Just use scoop an amount that you know that you'll be able to use before it starts to cure. So you have to be careful when you are scooping the amount. So after applying the layers, you apply some pressure. It would be good by your approximation that you apply in thin layers, all right? And then if you had to add something on top, you wait for it to cure, semi-cure. You wait for it to semi-cure so that when you apply the second layer, now the pressure will be between your hands and your spatula and the layer that you applied, which has cured. So somehow now we are also forcing bubbles up too. Now apply those subsequent layers up to the required profile, and should add a little more layer, so, for which to work on, like during grating. When grating, that is like removing excessive filler, when sanding and wet sanding. So you have to create some room for the work that will be done when block sanding and also grating. So if you have excessive filler, you can do what we call grating by using a body file, and use the body file now to remove excessive filler. And it's good to do grating. Grating, you do it before the filler cures completely. So you create you use a body file to remove excessive filler, but of course you leave a layer for block sanding, and block sanding requires some material which you'll sand off. Okay, so grating is done to remove excessive filler. Now, next step is to use a coarse sandpaper or a rough sandpaper, the heavy with the large grit, that is like from 36 to 40 grit number. To now you use that now to establish the required profile, and of course remove some of the excessive filler that might have been left. So use that you start with that one. If you, for example, try to use like 80 to 120 before using this one, it loads because there is a lot of material to remove and you don't want to get tired. That's why you are using even the body file, so that you remove the excessive filler, so that you don't have to sand a lot. And the same thing happens. That's why using the rough sandpaper at a 640 to remove some of the excess and also establish the profile much quickly. And of course, your sandpaper should be attached to a block, a suitable block. That is why we are calling it block sanding. Now, you after getting very close to your profile, you leave some material for now medium sandpaper. That's those sandpapers with grit numbers from 80 to 120. That is 80, 100, 120, those kind of sandpapers. And that now we will use it to remove those scratches that were made by the rough sandpaper, the 3640. But also, you can also not just, in addition to that, not just remove the scratch that were made by dust, but also correct other minor imperfections that may have arisen. Then, finally, you use an armory paper, and that's still a sandpaper. It's only that now these armory papers, they have grit numbers of 180 to like hatch 240. And remember, we can even go up to 1,000 depending on what we are working on. So, but now about 180 to 240, this grit number, you pour water onto the sanding area, the area to be sanded, and then you sand with at 180 and 240 to smoothen the area. You smoothen the area, and the way to know that the area is smooth is not by looking with your eyes. It's actually you have to touch. Use your hands to feel, because once we spray paint, if there were imperfections or scratches, the paint does not cover. It actually enhances those scratches. So it is very important that you smoothen completely and make sure that the surface is super smooth before you start spray painting. Now, we also need the next step. If you, depending on how you are doing your sanding, and there are some minor surface imperfections, you can use now the spot putty, and the spot putty will be used now to fill those minor surface imperfections like pinholes that were formed because of the overreaction of the hardeners, causing bubbles and those kind of things. And you apply the spot putty. Yes, forgive that. I am natural. I'm a human being who can cough. Anyway, you use single strokes and fast scraping motion stroke, and the strokes should be fewer. You don't want a lot of spot putty, because it usually cures. It does not use hardener, so it cures on the surface, and inner it takes much longer, and it is not good. It's not good. So thin layers, very thin layers of spot putty. After doing the spot putty, we need to prepare the surface for spray painting. But in this episode, we will not touch anything to do with this spray painting. That is for another day, because we need to look at other things in spray painting, types of paint, and also look at a few techniques for spray painting. We'll also look at types of paints and such things. But of course, after doing this, wet sanding, the first thing to do to prepare that surface is we are going to mask off the area around, so that we can do another process we call priming. And when priming, we do it by spray painting a primer, and this is done to create another safe foundation for the paint. So you have to mask the area to be sprayed to prevent primer overspray. There are several kinds of primers. We have a self-etching primer, epoxy primer, UV primer, and they are sprayed over the filler or even on bare metal areas where primer was not needed, where filler was not needed. So over the filler and also over bare metal surfaces. Self-etching primer is used where an area was badly pitted from surface rust. So it has a lot of surface rust, and it contains some acid, so that it eats on the especially on the rust, and it itself etches itself onto the surface and creates a very nice adhesive foundation for the paint work. Primer surfacer or primer filler is very good for areas with shallow surface pits. which can be then smoothed and leveled. Epoxy primer bonds to any surface and builds up easily to help level and smooth the areas quickly. You have to spray at least 2 to 3 coats, and each time you have to allow for them to cure fast. So that is the one mistake. We like to see the spray get there quickly. Like you want to see the color immediately. No, you should allow for layer to cure, and then you spray paint. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of part 2 bodywork. And we are going to continue with part 3, where we'll do priming and spray painting. I hope that you have learned something, and next time we'll even do much better. And we need your contribution. We need you to subscribe and also like our videos, so that we can improve next, and we can help the world, we can improve the world, we can improve African kids, and we can give them opportunities. Thank you very much.